Welcome to Rising Stars, where Miriam Knight, publisher of New Consciousness Review, interviews exciting new voices in the world of progressive and transformational books, films, and ideas, who offer intriguing perspectives on life, the universe, and everything in between. Join us as we celebrate the conscious awakening and explore many expressions of consciousness in action.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome. I'm Miriam Knight, the publisher of New Consciousness Review, and I am delighted to have as my guest today Paul Davids. Paul is a Princeton psychology graduate, an original fellow of the AFI Center for Advanced Film Studies, and an award-winning Hollywood writer, director, and producer of many TV films distributed by Showtime and NBC Universal, including The Sci-Fi Boys, which was the Saturn Award winner Best DVD of 2006, Jesus in India, and Roswell, that got a Golden Globe nominee. His latest film, Marilyn Monroe Declassified, will be released soon, and maybe we'll hear more about that later. Paul is also a poet and artist, and the co-author with his wife Hollis Davids of 6 books in the Lucasfilm Star Wars saga. Today, we are going to explore how science fiction turned into science fact for Paul as we discuss An Atheist in Heaven, the Ultimate Evidence for Life After Death, ? A new book he co-authored with Gary Schwartz, Ph.D. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you for having me, Miriam.
Well, you had me really quite intrigued. I mean, when you get a book that's co-authored by someone so well known in the world of science fantasy and a scientist whose work is dedicated to proving that psi phenomena are not necessarily fiction, you just have to call and say, okay, I'll bite. So what made you two decide to write this book together?
Well, we worked together on a film that was released in 2013 called The Life After Death Project. I was the producer, director of that film. Gary appeared in it, and in part it dealt with his research. The focus of that film, though, was the strange case of Forrest J Ackerman, who was my mentor for decades, who I got to know when I was a child. He was the editor of Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine, very, very famous in the world of science fiction. He even coined the term sci-fi. So strange things began happening in my life after the grand tribute for Forrest Ackerman. He died December 4th, 2008. March 8th of 2009, a large tribute for him was held in the Egyptian theater. Forrest had always been an atheist and very skeptical and dubious about God, prayer, religion, paranormal, even ESP and parapsychology and UFOs. And yet he was a man of great imagination and a futurist. So as he approached the end of his life, I said to him, Forrest, what if, have you given any thought to maybe you're wrong about this thing about life after death? And he replied saying, well, I doubt very seriously. I'm wrong. I've been an atheist all my life, and I will be to my dying breath. He said, but if it turns out I am wrong, and I wake up to the big science fiction convention in the sky after I die, he said, I'll spend time having reunions with my favorite actors like Boris Karloff, Frankenstein, Bela Lugosi, Dracula, Peter Lorre. He said, and of course my dear wife, Wendane. But when the party dies down, if it ever does, maybe I would drop you a line, let you know. He said, but don't count on it. So that was his response. But he had used this expression, maybe I would drop you a line. And I didn't think much more of it. I do want to go back in time to 1983 for a moment, when I was a segment producer for the famous attorney F. Lee Bailey. You know him from the O.J. Simpson trial.
Mm-hmm.
He had a show called Lie Detector.
Hmm.
And I was a segment coordinator on the show. And in that capacity, I would review different stories of people who wanted to come on the show and be wired up for a lie detector, for a polygraph, and hopefully have their story corroborated, a story that someone had doubted. And then they would be confronted on the show either that they were fabricating or that they were being confirmed, or occasionally it would come out as inconclusive. Back in '83, when I was on that show, I did have the experience with Dorothy Allison, psychic detective from New Jersey, who I brought on the show. Amazing woman who came with a file. She had dossiers, she had letters of commendation from police departments about how she had helped solve various cases through her psychic ability, especially finding bodies of murder victims that had not been found. And she provided clues that were useful, very useful in many cases. And she passed her polygraph. And I met her, I talked to her. I'd had no experience in this field. Psychics to me at that point was something I didn't take seriously. I have a psychology degree from Princeton. They don't teach psychics and mediums in Princeton. So
certainly not then.
No, I was, but she opened my mind because I felt, look, she did solve some of these cases. The one in particular where she passed the polygraph on our show was amazing. And she said she got the information from the murder victim. The spirit of the murder victim came to her. Mm-hmm. So in order to believe that, you have to believe, okay, there is life after death. There is a spirit world, that spirits look in on this world and still have concern about things going on in this world. And would still want, let's say, vindication, or at least their corpse found if they were murdered in this case. So you had to start to believe all of that. And so somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought, okay, maybe there's something to it. Now, jump forward in time. That was 1983. Forrest Ackerman, my mentor, dies in 2008. So, that's a lot of years. I mean, we're talking a quarter of a century. And it was the weekend of his tribute when I heard the first story from two Canadian filmmakers who were there. They had made a documentary about him. By the way, all of this is in my book that I wrote with Gary Schwartz, An Atheist in Heaven. It's also covered in the documentary, The Life After Death Project. But we went on and wrote the book because the academic world suggested to us that the documentary wasn't enough. We had scientific reports. We had research into the Ackerman afterlife communication case from scientists at 3 different universities. We had chemistry analysis. We had chemistry reports, studies that went on for 3 years. They wanted to see it in a book. That's why we have An Atheist in Heaven. So just to wrap the thought, the 2 Canadian filmmakers had something really weird happen to them that weekend of the tribute that made them feel absolutely, Forrest had contacted them 1 hour after they had visited his crypt. It made a really good story. Clearly, they really believed it. I didn't question it. And then 1 week later, it happened to me. There was an incident that literally changed my life. And when it happens to you, you go from intellectual interest in a subject to being confronted with the truth of something. And that was the process I went through.
I think a lot of people are in different points along that spectrum, from a rational, from perhaps an open-minded skepticism to belief, with personal experience being the thing that really nails it down.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I mean, my mother was an agnostic. I was raised not in any religion. I think my father was more open-minded than my mother. She said she was an agnostic, but really that was just a word that sort of covered her disbelief. And when I first told my mother, who was then in her late 80s, about what happened, that made me feel that I was hearing from Forrest Ackerman after he died. Her reaction was, this is crazy. Do we need a psychiatrist for you? Please don't tell anyone this.
Certainly none of my friends.
Not our friends. And she said, don't even tell your sister. Well, of course, none of that would fly. And she didn't find out till much later that I contacted my cousin after there was evidence of this. There was a message that I have determined, to my mind, certainly was from Forrest after he died. And he dropped me a line. It was ink, a line of text. He was an editor. He took one of my documents when I was alone in the house. I knew the document had nothing strange about it. And he blacked out 4 words with ink that was still moist while I was out of the room for a few minutes. And he blacked it out in a way that was precise, definite, targeted. You could see that those words were chosen. And the fact that it was still moist, and even the ink, at that time I didn't know whether it was ink or paint or solvent or a dye, but you could see it was in 2 different levels of blackness. So you could kind of read the first 2 words still, but the second 2 words were completely obliterated. I had to go back to my computer to the original file to see what it was.
Well, I have to admire your tenacity in getting to the root of it. I mean, you had spectrometry done on the ink. You went to scientists in their laboratories who pulled out little pieces of paper to determine what it was.
Yes, laser desorption. I had to agree that there could be destructive tests on the original. They called it an ink obliteration. We're going to go to break, I see.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
I just want to point out to our listeners that the book starts with a sworn and notarized affidavit that it's all true. So stay with us and listen to the rest of my interview with Paul Davids about an atheist in heaven.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM. As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hi everyone, this is Shay Parker, the host of Best of the Best, which airs live right here on IOM Radio every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm super excited to bring you expert guest hosts, spiritual discussions, free psychic readings, and so much more. I can promise that you will not want to miss this one-of-a-kind, fun, yet touching, down-to-earth show. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific on OTR-FM. This is Shay Parker, and I can't wait to see you there.
Mother, Mother Ocean.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Buffett. West Indian manatees are one of the most unique animals on Earth, and we're still finding out so many new things about them. But manatees are endangered, and many of them are killed or injured each year because of watercraft collisions or other human activities. You can help save these gentle marine mammals. For free tips on what you can do, call Save the Manatee Club at 1-800-432-JOIN. Thank you.
Well, we are back. I'm Miriam Knight, speaking with Paul Davids about an atheist in heaven. So you mentioned in the first segment about Forrest being a futurist, Forrest Ackerman, your mentor. Mm-hmm. It's kind of intriguing to think of science when we look back at science fiction movies of the past 50 or 75 years, how many of the things that were absolutely wild, over-the-top, extravagant predictions have actually become commonplace.
Well, That's absolutely true. I mean, Forrest Ackerman and his friend, the very famous writer Ray Bradbury, were saying back in the 1930s that man would get to the moon in their lifetime, and they were considered nuts, lunatics for actually believing that. So sometimes the people who are into imagination and science fiction, they're looking into a future they think could exist, and they look for the reasons that it could exist. And, so how many things from Star Trek have become true? Those communicators. I mean, we never imagined a world with iPhones, for example, that could do all those things. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that was an aspect. It's why science fiction writer Richard Matheson, when I interviewed him, he knew Forrest, and he agreed with my conclusion that Forrest was contacting me after he died. And he said, Forrest is correcting himself. He determined that he was wrong about that it's all over like a light bulb going out when the body dies, and he's letting you know. And he has let me know in so many ways I can scarcely count them, which is what makes the case such a unique one. I did go to scientists right away, and I want to get into more about that. But I want to say in the book, An Atheist in Heaven, I recount years of continuing unexplainable things that happened in my life, but not just my life, in the lives of the scientists who began studying this. They came to feel that they were having experiences very similar to mine, that absolutely, it was like living in the Twilight Zone. And when these experiences would come, often it would be at a time where there would be a strong concentration on Forrest Ackerman for some reason. For example, a movie that I was making about him getting accepted on the Sci-Fi Channel. That was the day that the plastic mask of his face that I had by itself moved 10 feet across the room in my home office, again, while I was out of the room, but nothing else moved in the room, and there were no open windows, no drafts. There's no explanation for it. So in the book, I deal with about 140 different incidents, since most of them since 2008, that I do not think can be explained. And I think probably around 100 of them do have to do with Forrest. Miriam, I was saying before when I said that my mother's reaction was so strong, don't tell anyone. The irony is that her deceased brother's son is my cousin, Dr. J. Siegel, who was absolutely one of the top forensic chemists in the country. At that time, J. Siegel was chairman of the chemistry department at Indiana University, Purdue University, at Indianapolis. And he had written many chemistry textbooks, a lot in forensics, crime. He's testified in many, many court trials where chemistry evidence is crucial to determining guilt or innocence. So I called up Jay, and I was very frank with him, and I told him what had happened to me, and that I was really, really shaken by it. I had no explanation for the blackout of these 4 lines. It seemed like it was impossible, from another world, as if from a ghost. If there was no one else in the house. And he said, why don't you FedEx me the document and I'll start to study it. And I said, no, I would never FedEx it. I won't let this out of my hands. I'm not going to take a chance on it getting lost. I'm going to get on a plane. I'm going to hand carry this to you. There's going to be no interruption in the chain of evidence from the time it happened. And let me bring my video cameras. Let's record what you do in your labs. And if you could explain this away and give me a logical explanation, please do. Fine. I would rather, not live with the feeling that I'm in touch with a ghost. But he was entirely unsuccessful for all of his tools at explaining this. And he brought in his great colleague, Dr. John Allison, College of New Jersey chemist, who contributed some chapters to our book, An Atheist in Heaven. And John Allison spent 3 years on the problem.
I thought it was amusing that he actually had his graduate students working on it as well.
Yes, it became the class project year after year. Could they duplicate the ink obliteration that happened to me, given all the facts that they knew about it? And science has been unable to duplicate it. It's a total mystery. And Dr. Allison can't explain the many weird things that began happening to him from the very day he began experimenting on this, some of which I caught on my video camera, just as it happened. So the bottom line is, having dealt with the world of skeptics, particularly with UFOs, because I was producer of Showtime's movie Roswell, and I heard from so many top people that the Roswell case was real. And I heard it from astronauts. Gordon Cooper, who first orbited the Earth, invited me to visit him after he saw the movie. And he told me how accurate we had it, according to everything he knew. And Dr. Edgar Mitchell, who walked on the moon, same thing. And yet the UFOs are debunked and debunked and denied. And the debunkers are always asking for that evidence, for some incontrovertible evidence that they can't say is a faked photo or, something duplicitous or a mistake. So I came to respect evidence in paranormal cases. When this incident happened to me, I was attuned to be concerned about it, especially because of what I had heard from the two Canadian filmmakers that Fari contacted them after they were at his crypt. And this happened to me a week later. So eventually, I found out what it meant with those 4 words that were blacked out, that it was tied in to a thank you for the tribute and to an apparition that his closest caretaker had had of him after he died, a man named Joe Moe. And it's really, it's changed my life because I have a new worldview now. That what we think is impossible is not only possible, but it happens every day. And I have a much more open mind now, and much more accepting of these things. And I welcome these contacts from Fari when they happen because I love it. It's a friendship continuing after death. And I took it on my shoulders as if a responsibility or a mission to record everything that happened accurately because there were so many things. And I wanted to present it. Really, it's a challenge to the skeptics. And I haven't heard from, no skeptic has picked up this book and gone through it to try to debunk it. As a matter of fact, when the top skeptic in America, probably, Dr. Michael Shermer, when he was in my film, The Life After Death Project, I wanted a skeptic, and he filled the role. He's the publisher of Skeptic magazine, and he's the
sort of the chief skeptic.
Yeah, he and James Randi sort of share the title, The Amazing Randi. He's also the executive director of the Skeptic Society. So he was in the film, and actually he was less skeptical than normally. He said, life after death. He said, look, I'm for it. I'm not against it. Everybody's for it. He said, I just don't see the proof. And if we have a consciousness after we die, doesn't that mean we must have had a consciousness before we were born? And where is that? And how would it be possible to know? He said, maybe someday with quantum theory and entanglement theory and advances in physics, we'll be able to explain it. And then it won't be paranormal. It'll be chapter 29 in your latest physics book. But Gary Schwartz, my co-author, feels we have the structure within science to explain it today. And he's contributed about 7 or 8 chapters to An Atheist in Heaven, and he puts it out there for you. And Michael Shermer signed for me in one of his books, The Believing Brain. He signed at the beginning to Paul, in respect of your honest search and integrity. And the people, I want to hear that I've been acknowledged by the head skeptic in America that I'm being honest and I've gone about it with integrity. The people who write quips at Amazon saying, oh, I didn't believe a word of it. Oh, we just have one man's word for it. Oh, there are lying sworn affidavits all the time. Oh, the man says he's an amateur magician. These just are probably magician's tricks. People who, I don't believe they really, read the book and saw the evidence. To say this is just one man's say-so is absolutely wrong. We have many witnesses to the different things that happened, and we have perplexed scientists at 3 universities, and things have happened to them.
Well, so many books are coming out and documentaries supporting the existence of consciousness, afterlife, and probably before life. Certainly a lot of hypnosis has come up with pre-birth memories or other life memories. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting about Shermer is that he is a skeptic with an open mind. A skeptic is somebody who has to be shown. And I think in one of Gary Schwartz's chapters, he's talking about the person from Missouri who says, show me. And then another person who says, I don't care what you show me, there's no way I'm going to believe it.
Well, Gary recounts a really embarrassing experience he had with Penn and Teller, and Lawrence O'Donnell, actually, who is someone I respect and appreciate, and I love listening to him on television now. But when Lawrence O'Donnell was having a pilot filmed, that he invited Gary Schwartz in and Penn and Teller, to talk about Gary's research on life after death. It's clear from Gary's chapter that he was absolutely railroaded. That he was set up and ambushed and treated really, really unfairly. And I do think that happens very frequently with television shows. I've seen it on CNN again and again with things that are historically controversial. Mm-hmm. Talk about the Kennedy assassination.
Sure.
See it with UFOs all the time. So it's a social problem, this closed-mindedness that prevents the research.
Yeah. Well, we'll pick that up after the break. I'm speaking with Paul Davids about an atheist in heaven. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Free your mind with OMTimes Radio, IOM FM.
Have you wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Hi, this is Christina Ricci with RAIN. Every 2 minutes, another American is sexually assaulted. If you or someone you know has been sexually assaulted, you are not alone. Help is just a call or click away through the National Sexual Assault Hotline. Please call 1-800-656-HOPE, that's HOPE, or visit RAIN.org, that's RAINN.org.
Brought to you by RAIN and this station.
Welcome back. I'm Miriam Knight speaking with Paul Davids about an atheist in heaven. Let's get back to your friend Forrest J Ackerman. You said that he was a confirmed skeptic, atheist, absolutely had no belief in the afterlife, which is kind of intriguing considering his line of work.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think was his intent in getting not only back to you, but in organizing this almost phalanx of events to influence the greatest possible number of people?
Well, I think it was a function of his personality in a way, because he not only was a mischief maker with a great and, well, I say great sense of humor. It was a unique, a little bit of a twisted sense of humor. It was very wry, but he was also a showman. And he also was relentless when he had an interest in something. You know, he never let it drop. And he always had a great memory. I mean, anything about the world of imaginative movies that went back to the earliest days of the silent films, he was a walking encyclopedia of every single detail. So Fari has gone about this, in my opinion, in death, very much the way he would have gone about it in life. He said, "I'll drop you a line." Well, he was always dropping people a line in life. I have about 15 postcards from him through the years, from his travels from many different countries. And it was always just sort of checking in, saying, "Hi, I'm here. I'm in an interesting place. Think of me. I'm thinking of you." So he was in touch with many, many people. I have to say, thousands of people in his lifetime. He was a prominent agent of science fiction for film and literature. And as the editor-in-chief of his magazine that he did with publisher James Warren, Famous Monsters of Filmland, it had so many readers and fans, particularly of my generation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's spreading the message, and he's not just relying on one person, you know, like me. But he has really been spreading the message that I'm still here, and he has responded to certain requests for signs. And then so many things have happened that take us by surprise that we have no control over. We never know when it's going to happen. Let me tell you the kinds of things, you know, because it encompasses many of the areas of afterlife research. There have been apports. There have been permanent disappearances of some objects that were related to the case in a way that was being discussed at the time, and things vanished and were never seen again. There were other things that vanished and then were searched for and then appeared in a very, very obvious place. Often these things would show up in the morning. You know, you wake up, you come down, you're in your office, and something you'd been looking for weeks is suddenly right beside your computer. It's happened to me with friends when I visit friends, particularly friends that knew Fari. I can think of one case of a lady that we hadn't seen each other in a long time. She had once sent me a book. She said at Fari's prompting, you know, she just sort of sensed that I should have that book. So we talked and at length, and then afterwards we went back to her car. And she said right on the passenger seat then was a pair of sunglasses that she had been looking for 6 months. She said it couldn't have been there. She said she'd had the car washed, you know, many times, cleaned out. She looked everywhere, and there it is in plain sight.
Mm-hmm.
So again and again, there have been apports in plain sight, disappearances and appearances. There has been what we call instrumental transcommunication. That includes EVP, electronic voice phenomena. And it means the use of our own technology, whether it's computers or video cameras or audio tape or even a telephone, to have a communication between the worlds, from beyond the veil, if you will. Many experiences like that. It even happened to my wife and I from my father-in-law after he passed. And these incidents are included in An Atheist's Heaven.
Well, I think that makes sense because we talk about the nature of consciousness as having the qualities of light and electricity, the nature of being, the body electric. And so being able to influence electronic instruments is not wildly outside of the imagination.
I know. I don't think it is. So I mentioned instrumental transcommunication and apports, but other areas, synchronicities.
Mm-hmm.
Synchronicities are those 1 in a million, 1 in a billion coincidences where something just shocks you because of the way a few events have come together seemingly impossibly. Well, we always know that really rare chance is going to show up sometime. There's always going to be somebody who wins the lottery. There's always going to be somebody who's hit by lightning. The question is, at what point is it no longer coincidence? When you have one incident after another, after another, after another, then I think you have to abandon what the debunkers and skeptics say when they say mere coincidence, and you have to say, no, there's something at work behind this, and it's communication from someone you can't see with your eyes. So there's that. There's the physical phenomena, such as, the ink that happened to me, the line of ink, but we had many, many physical phenomena, moving objects having to do with masks, popping off a wall and going a few feet through the air at a dinner party right after the punchline of a joke. We held a seance in the Ackerman mansion. We were invited back to the house he lived in. By the way, it was an 18-room house. It was called the Ackerman mansion. He collected everything he could about science fiction, props for movies, masks, lobby cards, posters, every science fiction book you can imagine, first editions. And the house was filled with these things, and he would have visitors. So he had to move out about 6 years before he passed away. And he moved to a smaller house. But that Ackerman mansion was then remodeled. I know the new owner. Weird stuff had been happening at the Ackerman mansion. Even in my film, The Life After Death Project, I interviewed a couple of the tenants who lived there who talked about the strange stuff. And it's starting to be a long list of those things. So we were invited back, meaning Gary Schwartz and I, and we brought a scientific team with us for 4 days at the Ackerman mansion. And we also brought mediums and psychics. And we did hold a seance there. And at the climax of that seance, one of the scientists we had brought suddenly had a very disturbed look on his face and was touching the couch he was sitting on. And the whole couch was vibrating. And we had been told in the seance that there was going to be a sign. And this came right after Montague Keen was discussed. He was a life-after-death researcher, now passed away. He was involved with these skull experiments out of England. And we were told this was a sign from Montague Keen. All right. Now, I'm always going to retain a certain skepticism in my mind, and I wanted to examine that couch, because my devious mind thinks, wait a minute, did somebody leave a vibrating sex toy in there? But I took the pillows apart. I checked everything about that couch, and there was nothing like that, to explain it. I even slept on the couch that night to see if it would happen again. It didn't. Because we had one of the psychics during those 4 days and 3 nights, she had reported her bed vibrating strongly in the middle of the night, and she wondered if it was an earthquake. So there was a number of phenomena that happened during the research. So bottom line, An Atheist in Heaven documents it all very thoroughly with lots of photos of everything I felt was relevant, all the people, incidents, evidence, scientific reports. And the documentary film, The Life After Death Project, takes it all up to 2013. And I do want to say I made a sequel also to The Life After Death Project. So there was a number 2 called Personal Encounters. If you do get the DVD, both of those films are in the DVD.
And where are they available, Paul?
I think the easiest way is Amazon.com, where you can get it all. But if you go to... I have a website about this, which is lifeafterdeathproject.com. Mm-hmm. No, we have the DVD available there. And I also want to say that for my film, Jesus in India, which is one of my most popular films about the missing years of Christ, filmed in India and at the Vatican and at various universities. We have a site, jesusinindiathemovie.com. And there's a DVD, there's even a music soundtrack, and there's the book it was based on, and the book that was written about making the film. So those are good sites to check out. In addition, of course, Amazon.com is kind of one-stop shopping, and they do offer discounts.
Right.
Well, and also with the book, it's a hardback, but it's also available there as an ebook.
Very good.
So that's the story there.
So it's Life After Death, The Project is the name of the book?
No, the website is
lifeafterdeathproject.com.
Yeah, don't forget the word project or you'll never find it.
Right, and the name of the book is?
An Atheist in Heaven.
Well, that's the current book, but you were talking about...
Oh, no, that there was two
DVDs.
Yeah, the Life After Death Project that was shown on Sci-Fi, and if you order the DVD, a second DVD is in there, the Life After Death Project 2, Personal Encounters.
Okay.
So I've been working at this now for years since it all started, and never intended, never planned. It's just when I brought my camera into those laboratories, began filming what was happening, and then one opportunity after another opened up for me to further explore it, it grew into a documentary.
Has it changed your personal relationship with the notion of death?
Yes. You know, I cannot subscribe to the idea of the materialists that I grew up with that when the body dies, it's like a light bulb going out that never shines again. So I do think there's life after death. We go on. Personality is even retained.
Sounds good to me. I'm willing to subscribe.
Like Michael Shermer says, not against it.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with Paul Davids and An Atheist in Heaven.
Bringing you the best of the conscious minds in the world. OMTimes Radio, your conscious lifestyle on steroids. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Join me, Maggie Chula, on Mondays at noon Eastern for Mastermind with Maggie. Let's work together in a mastermind. We can resolve life's problems and create goals for the future. Build action steps empowering you to create your life in partnership with your divine source of light, your soul. Manifesting your goals can be simple and easy, so come with your problems and leave with a plan. The Akashic Master Teachers and I are waiting to help you.
Hi, this is Carly Simon for LifeBeat. The music industry fights AIDS. The AIDS crisis isn't over. There have been amazing scientific breakthroughs, but people are still dying, and your local AIDS organization needs your help more now than ever. Volunteer and make a difference.
I'm speaking with Paul Davids, the co-author with Gary Schwartz of An Atheist in Heaven. I was really upset when I read that bit in Gary's chapter about his encounter with Larry O'Donnell and Penn. It just was such a vicious and closed-minded attack. What do you think was motivating them? Was it just fear of the unknown, or were they trying to score points?
I think that it's their belief, and that a lot of people are very invested in their beliefs and not interested in exploring beyond them on certain subjects. I think it's true of very religious people. They are committed to their beliefs, and there's things that they're not up for discussion. And I think the same is true of certain people that absolutely will not consider the paranormal and have a debunker mentality. One of those people, Ray Bradbury, I want to mention, the great science fiction writer. I so wanted to get to him with the information about these things happening with Fari, and that I had science behind me. I wanted to get this to him before he passed away. And he had helped me to some extent with my film, The Sci-Fi Boys. And then he had been ill, and it was out of touch. And also, one of the things I mentioned, apports that happened, a white whale. A figurine of a white whale that my wife had purchased, and she knew exactly where she put it, and no one had touched it. No one could have touched it, and it vanished overnight. It was gone, and it wasn't lost on me that a white whale. You think of Moby Dick, and Ray Bradbury was the author of the screenplay of Moby Dick. John Huston has a credit on it too, but it was really, the lion's share of the work was certainly Ray Bradbury. So I wondered was this another possible, message or warning from Fari that Ray Bradbury didn't have long to live, mm-hmm. and I wanted to get through to him. And my initial effort to talk about that subject was rebuffed. So I had a friend who was in town who knew him well, who had a meeting set up, and I said, "Would you please tell Ray Bradbury what's been going on and how badly I want to talk to him about all this?" And then he reported back to me after the meeting. He said, "Sadly," "I'm going to tell you that I told him that you felt that you were hearing from our mutual friend Fari Ackerman, and he responded with 4 words. He said, 'Tell him he's wrong.'" And then Ray Bradbury passed away, and I don't think I've heard from Ray Bradbury. Maybe I'll hear from him tonight.
Surprise!
I know.
I read and heard somewhere that Gene Roddenberry actually met with a channel for over 30 years, and that much of the Star Trek was channeled.
I don't know about that. I really don't. I had heard that he was a skeptic too, sort of like Fari, but I don't know. Miriam, one thing I would like to be able to do in some of the remaining time we have, because I know we're creeping up on the end.
Absolutely.
I'd like to let your listeners know about some of my other films, that are available.
Well, I was going to ask you about this new film that you have about Marilyn.
It's not out yet, but it will be this year. It's called Marilyn Monroe Declassified.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very proud of it. And it digs very deeply into the mystery of her death that has been disputed ever since she passed in 1962.
Now, is this using esoteric sources or actual people?
No, this is people and political figures and evidence and testimony. However, there were things that happened behind the scenes, sort of akin to some of the things that have happened with Fari that made me wonder. But let me just say, Marilyn Monroe Declassified, it's not out yet. It will be this year, and there is a website, MarilynDeclassified.com. You can see the trailer and get information there. But some of the other projects I've done that are you can find now, each one I have focused on things that are out of the ordinary, sometimes considered fringe. I try to bring some of these things into the mainstream, like Roswell, or it's called Roswell the UFO Cover-Up on DVD. And that was for Showtime, about the UFO crash in New Mexico in 1947. I directed my first film called Timothy Leary's Dead, about the LSD promoter from Harvard, Timothy Leary, who was sort of a founding father of the psychedelic generation. So I did his biography. That's going to be online for streaming in the near future. It came out in '97, and it was widely distributed and then became hard to get, but it's coming back.
Isn't he now called Ram Dass?
Ram Dass was his associate, Richard Alpert.
Oh, Richard Alpert, right.
Yes, Richard Alpert and Timothy Leary worked together, along with Ralph Metzger. They were all from Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Timothy was the grumpy skeptic, and Ram Dass has become the spiritual mystic. They both used psychedelics very heavily, which shaped their consciousness in many ways. The other films, Starry Night, is a fantasy I did. Universal released it. Easy to find. It's about Van Gogh, but it's a fantasy about Vincent Van Gogh. And again, it's like a life after death theme, because it's a fantasy in which Vincent is given 100 days to come back and be among us and straighten out his affairs, because he thought he died as an unsuccessful artist. He'd only sold one painting in his lifetime.
Well,
today,
as an artist, are you particularly drawn to Van Gogh?
Oh, very much so. Yeah, I have an art site for my art, hundreds of paintings. I'm in many galleries, including I was just added to the Rio Grande Gallery with some very famous artists of the Southwest. That's in Albuquerque, and Gallery Tesla in Sedona, and then the Ritz-Carlton in Laguna Niguel. I had a large 3-month display of my paintings. So if you go to pauldavids-artist.com, you can see the paintings, and it has access to things about all my different films and quite a number of books. There are even 6 coffee table books at blurb.com, The Art of Paul Jeffrey Davids. So very serious on the art. Very quickly, I just wanted to say The Sci-Fi Boys is one of my important films, I think. Saturn Award Best DVD of the Year. And it deals with the history and growth of science fiction and special effects. Peter Jackson is the host, and it deals with Forrest Ackerman's influence. I mentioned Jesus in India, and I know your listeners would be interested in my film Before We Say Goodbye. It's at Amazon Prime. It is really a wonderful, heartwarming story based on a stage play. All Hispanic American cast in New Mexico, where the star is a Hispanic American grandmother who's a devout Catholic and a devout believer in the miracle of Our Lady of Guadalupe. It's a very important Catholic miracle in the Hispanic culture. 1531, that was the year, miracle of a lady from heaven imprinting her image on the cactus cloth of a peasant. And then the image has survived 500 some years later. You can see it in the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico City, and they let us film there. So that one's called Before We Say Goodbye. Again, it has a life after death and a heavenly theme. So those are, that plus, of course, what we've been talking about today, the Life After Death Project, and now An Atheist in Heaven. It's getting to be a body of work.
Well, what is your hope for reaching out into the world? What do you hope your book will accomplish?
Well, I think I'd like to open skeptical minds with it. It's nice to preach to the choir, as they say, preaching to the converted. So it's nice to reach people that will agree with you, who feel they already know that there is life after death and that spirits can communicate. I think they'll find the book very interesting and very supportive of what they feel they already know. But I would really love to be able to reach some scientists with this book, because it really is for them. And one of the scientists who worked on the book with me said, it's hard to get my colleagues to read it. They hear the topic and they think it's silly. It's not silly. It's hardcore science. And until you open up your mind and see that there can be real data about these things, that trained scientists are schooled to ignore, and that's a mistake of our culture. It's a terrible mistake of the Western mind of ignoring, blacking out, and completely rejecting these things that, have been considered fringe topics. But now with advances in science, we have tools to measure things we couldn't measure before. And the evidence, as you had said, is increasing.
In fact, they're no longer fringe. And I think we can see in the last, 10 years in particular, there's been an exponential increase in openness to paranormal phenomena. And I think that there's been an increase in occurrence and acknowledgement of these paranormal phenomena. It's like we're coming full circle, because we used to be, as a humanity, used to be very much connected with the different dimensions, with the paranormal, with the gods, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went into the rational mode. And I think now we're coming back. And really, I think connection with the paranormal is getting back into connection with ourselves.
Well, I think you put that very well, and I hope we'll have more response from the scientific world, because they're a tough nut to crack.
Well, from your lips to God's ear. Forry, get on it.
Thank you.
Paul David, an atheist in heaven, thank you so much.
Call.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Call.
I'm Miriam Knight for New Consciousness.
Call.
Join us next week. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.